If you're a movie fan or a fan of fiction, you will be a fan of this analogy that I'm going to give you. Think about it this way. Either from the protagonist point of view or the antagonist point of view. But for the purposes of this video, Manchester City will be the antagonist. You know how sometimes you watch a movie and the person who you think is going to escape, especially if it's one of those really intense movies, is just about to get to the door and they're about to escape. And then all of a sudden you see a shadow in the back and you just realize, oh my goodness, the bad person is not dead yet. And the victim is definitely going to go back into the layer and they are going to remain trapped. Or maybe it's a superhero movie, right? And the hero has almost made it all the way to the end and he's saved everybody, and you know the bad person is somewhere in a grave rotting and dying. And then the movie ends with the proverbial hand just popping out of the grave and you know something ominous like, he's back. Yes, that was Manchester City today. When all the other title rivals were watching this game, they were hoping and praying that the St. James's Park crowd is going to be able to keep Manchester City at bay. They only had 3 more minutes to do it. And right as there was a slight cheer when the 4th official put up the board saying that it's going to be 3 minutes added on and they were going to try and cheer the Geordies all the way to the end, guess what? Oscar Bob pops up with a beautiful goal. Pirouetted right around Dubravka, who had one of the best games that any goalkeeper could ask for, and yet it was still not enough. Hey guys, that long intro was by your boy Izzy. And if you're new to the channel and if you want to see more of that, make sure to hit the like and the subscribe button. But we're going to be talking about Manchester City's 3-2 comeback victory against Newcastle. Something that you always had this feeling right in the back of your head that they were going to do. The game started off very well, right? Newcastle United seemed as though they were up for it. They were pressing the team that was Manchester City that we know are the ultimate in pressing. For the first 5 minutes, Newcastle settled down a whole lot faster than Manchester City. So much so that they had a goal chalked out for offside, rightly so. And Newcastle had laid their intent right at the door. But eventually, Manchester City started to grow into the game. It didn't take them that long because after the first 10 minutes, you could now sense that Manchester City were getting comfortable. Their passing was nice. It was crisp. And then they started to take control of the game. They were very good in that first 20 to 25 minutes, and they were definitely rewarded after Bernardo Silva turned in a very, very beautiful goal, back flicking it past Dubravka after a fizzing cross from Kyle Walker over on the right. And at that point, you could have started fearing for Newcastle. Most of us already did. And Newcastle were now staring down the barrel of a gun that was telling them they were going to lose 4 consecutive games. But the Geordie crowd started to make a little bit more noise, and Newcastle were now revved up, and they realized that they wanted to get something out of this game. And so they decided to target the very same Kyle Walker, who was before that having a very good game. But they scored 2 very quick fire goals. The first was a nice pass from Bruno Guimaraes, where he was able to pick out Alexander Isak, who coolly curved the ball right around Ortega, who seemed as though he was very shaky because in the first few minutes he had already given the ball away a couple of times, nervously so. But this goal was very, very good and very symptomatic of what Newcastle were trying to do. They needed to find one small mistake in Manchester City, and they were able to target Kyle Walker again, who seemed to be unusually having a very lackadaisical game over on the right-hand side. He was very good going forward, but after Anthony Gordon managed to curl a very similar chance, but this time a little bit more angular, to the same corner that Isak was able to do, Kyle Walker now started to realize that he might want to stay back a little bit because Newcastle had finally found the small fissure that they were going to be able to try and take advantage of. And Newcastle could have easily gone 3-1 up. Their tails were up at this moment, and Isak had another glorious chance to be able to give them a 3-1 lead at halftime, but he unfortunately shot straight at Ortega, who easily palmed the ball away. Now, Newcastle finished this half the stronger of the two sides, and Manchester City, for all their beautiful passing, all of their good build-up play, were now losing 2-1, and they couldn't imagine exactly how they got into this position in the first place. Kyle Walker was now pinned back a little bit more. Manchester City needed to now start using a different avenue when they attacked. Now, in the second half, they started a little bit more in the same vein as they did in the first half, a little bit more fervor, and they realized that they can have Newcastle for the taking because Newcastle started to look a bit leggy. They looked as though they were ready to settle for that 2-1 lead as early as the 55th minute. The commentary team was at pains to let us know that Kevin De Bruyne was still on the bench, very ominously so. The sense of foreboding was pretty nerve-wracking because right around the 65th minute, there was supposedly going to be a change for De Bruyne to come in and replace Doku, but they switched it around and decided to replace Silva. Now, I have said before that Bernardo Silva is one of the most important cogs in Manchester City's team, and he is usually entrusted with the deep-lying creation of the team's chances. Now, not taking Doku off was to ensure that they keep the fullbacks honest. They wanted to keep them busy. De Bruyne was going to come in and become the creator-in-chief that we know him to. Now, this sense of foreboding was very ominous for Newcastle. And at this point, it only looked as though it was going to be just a matter of time before Manchester City eventually found an equalizer. And it came so in the process, thanks to some very good play from De Bruyne, who created and fashioned his own space and was able to pass the ball so easily right past Dubravka, right through the legs of Cher. It was kind of tough on Newcastle, who seemed to have expended a lot of energy on trying to defend. The problem is, just a little bit after that, they were now starting to look as though they had no more ideas, and they were definitely trying to stick it out for that point. Manchester City did as Manchester City always do. They just kept on fashioning chances very slowly. They never gave up. They kept up with the same build-up play, and a few more substitutions saw the eventual winner come in. Oscar Bob was put in, and he, from the post-match comments he made, was given a very simple task. Go on there and score the winner for me. That's what Pep Guardiola told him. Him and Kevin De Bruyne were already seemingly having a very good interplay when he came in, and eventually, right at 90 minutes, Kevin De Bruyne latched onto a ball, put in a sumptuous cross in, which Bob managed to control a little fortuitously because he managed to get it right past Kieran Trippier, who put in a challenge, but the ball sat invitingly for him, and he was able to pirouette just right past Dubravka with a beautiful 1-2 zip touch and put it right past the onrushing Newcastle goalie. It was a beautiful goal. And as I said before, Manchester City are now looking like that, depending on how you look at it. For Manchester City fans, the protagonists. They look as though they want to come and get their title back, and it's very hard to see past them, at certain points. The other teams who were chasing them as far as the league title is concerned were definitely disheartened by this comeback victory, but you could almost always see it all the way through the game that Manchester City were not going to be denied. Newcastle have a very terrible record against Manchester City, and they should really count themselves honestly lucky that they were able to keep up with them for as long as they did. That 1-2 sucker punch, which we are not used to seeing Manchester City have, happened right in the middle of the first half, and it was probably a lapse in concentration from Kyle Walker, and maybe some of the Manchester City defense were a little bit caught in transition, and they didn't know how to respond to it. Newcastle did that very well. Now, eventually, when legs begin to tire, brains begin to get scrambled, the worst person you want to see coming on is Kevin De Bruyne. And we saw him come in there and elevate this team to a level that we just are not used to seeing because he's been out for so long. And that is how easily the title talk can change from it being an Arsenal, procession all the way to the end, or a Liverpool procession to the end, to just seeing how good Manchester City are, because as long as they have Kevin De Bruyne or Erling Haaland in that team, it is so hard to see past them not winning the title. I think that Liverpool are still going to be very formidable as far as their attack goes, and maybe once their midfield keeps on coagulating well, I think that we will see a very good title race down the end. And as far as Arsenal and Tottenham, it's going to be hard for those two to keep up, because Liverpool and Manchester City have just been doing it for so long, because for the last 4 or 5 years, it's just been nothing but the two of them. At the end of the day, I think that Manchester City are coming back for their title, and they put out a very strong statement today because they made Newcastle, who have beaten all and sundry who have come to St. James's Park, very soundly. They beat them without really clicking into 100% gear, and how methodical they were and how clinical they were in taking apart Newcastle and taking their time to eventually get ahead is going to be worrying for the rest of the league. But that's all I got for right now. I hope you enjoyed my little movie analogy at the beginning. I just think that Manchester City are that villain that will never die. And they will also, on the part of their fans, be the superhero who always delivers at the end. It just depends on how you look at it, from which side. On my side, I'm looking at him as the villain because I'm an Arsenal fan, and I'm pretty sure that all Liverpool fans are also looking at them the same way, because, and probably more so for Liverpool, because if you think about it, Manchester City have taken countless titles from Liverpool. You have to go all the way back to the 2013-2014 season. Then you go back to the 97 and 98 point season. And then you go all the way back to other title challenges that Pep Guardiola has had with Jurgen Klopp, even all the way in Germany. It just almost seems as though this man cannot lose. Pep Guardiola is quite possibly the best manager we've ever seen. But anyway, guys, thank you for watching. It's been your boy Izzy. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button. Thank you for all of your support. I appreciate the privilege of you watching me right now. And until the next one, peace.